Hello and welcome. You're watching 6 Stories at 6 on Republic. I am Ishita Mitra and this is the show where we get you the top stories of the day. Now viewers, first up, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has landed in Israel. He was received at the airport by Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his wife Sarah Netanyahu. A short while ago, our senior executive editor Abhishek Kapoor explains the strategic partnership between India and Israel. Next up, we talk about how the US President Donald Trump in his State of the Union address made some big claims exposing Pakistan on the global stage. Now, Trump said Pakistan Prime Minister told him that had it not been for his intervention, 35 million people would have died. Now, we also discuss how an 8-year-old Rayansh continues to battle for his life while the pressure builds up and the police have now arrested the uncle, but the shooter still remains at large. We also discuss how 4 people have been arrested in the 590 crore rupees IDFC First Bank fraud. Haryana State Vigilance and Anti-Corruption Bureau made the arrest on Friday evening as part of the ongoing investigation. Now, viewers, after 2 incidents of racial abuse came to light, chief ministers of the northeastern states have now spoken out strongly against it. The racist couple has been arrested in the Delhi case, and the question being, are the arrests enough? All that and more lined up for you ahead in our show. Starting also, in fact, we're going to cover the fact that Uttar Pradesh Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath signed a memorandum of understanding worth about rupees 11,000 crore with several Japanese companies on the first day of his official visit to Japan. It is aimed at boosting industrial investment and manufacturing growth in the state. All that and more lined up for you in the show ahead. All right, we are starting with as Prime Minister Modi visits Israel, defense ties between the two countries are consequential than ever. The India-Israel Defense Channel is now defined by high-end, high-utility systems. Over 2022-2024 period, India's purchases from Israel are concentrated in advanced technology, dense categories that directly shape its deterrence and response time. Now, the upcoming deal is reported to be at rupees 8,000 crore. Let's understand what is on the cards for India from this latest visit of Indian Prime Minister.
The expectations are that we are going to see a comprehensive upgrade in India-Israel ties. Not that they are in any manner neglected or weak. They are already very strong and enduring. But with this state visit, we are going to see a tremendous push coming in to the next level. That's how our contacts are really projecting it. This state visit of Prime Minister Modi to Israel, where the two leaders, Prime Minister and his Israeli counterpart Benjamin Netanyahu, are going to review what has been achieved over the last decade or so since the two made a mutual visit to each nation. So Prime Minister Modi visited Israel in 2017. Prime Minister Netanyahu reciprocated it with 2018 visit in the month of January. And since then, because of the COVID break, those bilateral visits have not taken place and it's happening now. And you can expect that given the fact that it is happening in the backdrop of Operation Sindoor, and Israel was one of the first countries to condemn Pahalgam terror attack, and it's not hidden the defense, existing strong defense partnership in terms of a joint collaboration on technological exchange and weapon systems purchases. I think you're going to see tremendous focus on that. Generally, when you talk about India-Israel, that remains under the spotlight, though of course there are other aspects like agriculture, like innovation, like technology. And remember, Israeli exports, technology remains a key component of Israeli exports, particularly in the cyber domain. So you're going to see a lot of push happening there during the visit on all these fronts. Prime Minister personally, Ishita, has had a long connect going back to his days as Chief Minister of Gujarat when he visited Israel in 2006. Since then, he became the first Prime Minister of the country to be visiting Israel, and that itself was a statement of sorts being made by Narendra Modi. And he made history by visiting Israel in 2017. Now, also look at the backdrop in which this visit is happening, Ishita, which is that there are tensions in the Middle East, in West Asia, as we call it, and United States has really mobilized its biggest war machine yet since the 2003 Iraq war, and it's likely that there might be some action, and things are really hotting up, building up in that direction, and Prime Minister Modi landing in Tel Aviv in that backdrop itself is a significant statement of intent insofar as India's relevance in the Middle East is concerned. Remember, the visit was announced by Prime Minister Netanyahu himself when he spoke during his cabinet meeting and said that he's looking at this visit as shaping up of a hexagon of alliances, by which obviously he means the partnership that Israel has been building in the larger West Asia region, specifically the Muslim world, including the possibility of Saudi Arabia joining the Abraham Accords at some stage in future, not immediately because of the tensions prevailing. So be it Israel, UAE, India, United States, all coming together in the geography. The fact that Prime Minister visited Jordan and Oman in the month of December. Then in the month of January, we had UAE's President MBZ arriving in New Delhi. And then in the month of January, again, we had, in the month of February, in fact, we had the Arab League Summit taking place in New Delhi with the 27 Arab countries and their foreign ministers arriving, and that really shows the kind of salience India has really achieved with quiet diplomacy in the geography and Prime Minister's visit to Israel. So while on the one hand we have good relationship with Jordan, on the other we continue to emphasize that Palestine and the human rights of Palestinians need to be taken care of, even as India solidly backs Israel on its war against Hamas.
Now we are shifting focus. US President Donald Trump's State of the Union address exposed Pakistan on the global stage. Now clearing all the doubts and disseminating his own claims that India requested US to mediate between India and Pakistan conflict during Operation Sindoor. US President now says that Pakistan Prime Minister told him that 35 million people would have died if it was not for his intervention in the conflict, confirming that Pakistan in fact begged the United States for intervention. Take a look at this report.
Trump was delivering his State of the Union address, taking on Democrats, boasting about his crackdown on illegal immigration and his drill baby drill agenda. But watchers of foreign policy were amused at what Trump had to say about Pakistan. Trump, while speaking on the standoff between India and Pakistan in May last year, said Pakistan Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif begged in front of US President Donald Trump to stop the war. Trump told joint session of US Congress that Pakistan Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif told him 35 million people would have died if it were not for Trump's involvement.
Pakistan and India would have been a nuclear war. 35 million people, said the Prime Minister of Pakistan, would have died if it were not for my involvement. Kosovo and Serbia, Israel and Iran, Egypt and Ethiopia, Armenia and Azerbaijan, the Congo and Rwanda, and of course the war in Gaza, which proceeds at a very low level. It's just about there. And I want to thank Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner for your help. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Jared.
But the irony does not end here. After Trump's address, Pakistan thanked Donald Trump for stopping the war after Pakistan begged for it. Stopping the war when Pakistan was running out of options. When Pakistan's military arsenal was depleting and when India was destroying Pakistan air bases, Noorka, Bhulari, Sargodha and Jacobabad.
Sargodha Kent area hai ye, airbase hai.
But even as Trump exposes Pakistan, one thing has not changed. Pakistan was scared then, and Pakistan is scared now. Remember how Shehbaz Sharif was stammering when India took the decisive call to launch precision strikes. and eliminate Jaish-e-Mohammed, Lashkar-e-Taiba and Hizbul Mujahideen terror bases sheltered by Pakistan. Shehbaz Sharif himself publicly admitted Indian ballistic missiles striking its military bases during the conflict. Pakistan tried to spread all kinds of propaganda against India. Pakistan claimed it destroyed India's S-400 missile systems. But Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi visited Adampur Air Base posing with an undamaged S-400 system to debunk Pakistani claims, destroying Pakistan's lies for the world to take notice.
भारत माता की जय ये सिर्फ उद्घोष नहीं है, ये देश के हर उस सैनिक की शपथ है जो मां भारती की मान मर्यादा के लिए जान की बाजी लगा देता है। जब हमारी मिसाइलें सनसनाती हुई निशाने पर पहुंचती हैं तो दुश्मन को सुनाई देता है भारत माता की जय।
So nothing has changed for Pakistan. The lies, the propaganda against India and the habit of begging to United States.
And now viewers, a family of an 8-year-old Reyansh exclusively spoke to Republic TV and recounted the horrifying celebratory firing at the wedding procession in which the innocent child was left hurt and is fighting for his life in coma. Now the child's parents in sheer pain recalled how confused and hopeless they felt after seeing their son bleeding. Now, the heartbreaking incident took place during wedding celebration at the house of a man named Robin Verma, who was preparing for his daughter's marriage. As the pressure, viewers, now builds up, the police have arrested the shooter's uncle, but the shooter still remains at large. Here's a detailed report. Take a look.
Celebratory firing pushed 8-year-old Reyansh into coma. The agony of a mother says there is no improvement in Reyansh's condition.
जो स्थिति रियांश की कल थी वही स्थिति आज है।
डॉक्टर से कुछ बोला अभी टेस्ट को लेकर?
हाँ जी, आज उसे टेस्ट के लिए लेके गए हैं, सीटी स्कैन के लिए लेकर गए थे। तो अभी रिपोर्ट तो नहीं आई है, बट मैंने फिर पूछा कि वैसे आपने देखा है तो क्या आपको लगा, तो डॉक्टर बोलते हैं कि अभी कोई ऐसा ज़्यादा इम्प्रूवमेंट नहीं है।
As Republic confronts the local MLA and the pressure builds up, one gets arrested, but who? The uncle of the shooter, while the actual shooter responsible for the suffering of an 8-year-old still absconding.
अधिकार नहीं ना बोलने का।
परिवार वाले बोल रहे हैं कि वो बच्चा 18 साल का था भी नहीं, वो बड़ा है।
मुझे भाई बोलने का अधिकार, आप वहाँ जाकर जो भी आपके प्रश्न हो वहाँ पे सीओ साहब हैं, आप उनसे
आपका बतौर थाना प्रभारी कुछ तो जिम्मेदारी
भाई नहीं बोलने का अधिकार है। आप जाकर के वहाँ जो ऑथेंटिक है वो आप वहाँ जाकर कर सकते हैं। आप मुझ पर दबाव बना रहे हैं। दबाव सर, मैं आप मुझ पर दबाव, आप काम नहीं कर रहे हैं। मैं आपको लीगल बता रहा हूँ, किसी भी इसको रख लीजिए। माइक में हाथ मत लगाइए। नहीं बिल्कुल, आप सवाल पूछ रहे हैं, बिल्कुल सही। आप ऑथेंटिक जो भी है जाइए सीओ साहब से मिलिए, पूरी जानकारी आपको मिलेगी। आप थाना आपको पूरी जानकारी मिलेगी भाई, जो भी आप जानकारी चाह रहे हैं, जिस भी मैटर चाह रहे हैं, आपको सारी जानकारी दी जाएगी। सर हम एक आप बस इतना बता दीजिए क्योंकि आप इन्वेस्टिगेट कर रहे हैं आपके थाने से। हेलो।
Father confused and hopeless.
जब मैंने अपने बेटे की कंडीशन देखी तो शायद मैं उस कंडीशन को नहीं देख पाया, तभी मैं डॉक्टर के सामने वेंटिलेटर हटाने के बाद रूम से आउटसाइड आ गया था। आईसीयू से मैं बाहर वेट करता रहा डॉक्टर का। मैंने कि डॉक्टर थोड़ा जब निकलेंगे तो मैं एक बार उनसे कंफर्मेशन कर लेता हूँ कि मेरे बेटे की कंडीशन अब क्या है, बिकॉज जिस कंडीशन में मैं उसे आईसीयू से देख के बाहर आया तो शायद मैं उस कंडीशन को नहीं देख पाया।
The child's family claims that the shooter is not a minor as opposed to the claims of police. CCTV reveals Krishna Verma, the main accused, allegedly brought his father's licensed pistol outdoors and began firing in the air, not thinking about the consequences. Now, with the main accused still absconding and the family demanding justice, pressure mounts on authorities to ensure swift action while the 8-year-old fights for his life.
And now viewers, in the first arrest made in rupees 590 crore IDFC First Bank fraud case, Haryana's State Vigilance and Anti-Corruption Bureau has taken 4 people into custody, including a former bank employee as well as a manager. Now the Anti-Corruption Bureau had earlier registered an FIR, while the state government set up a committee to probe the massive fraud. The bank has disclosed that the employees and others allegedly siphoned off funds from accounts held by the Haryana government itself. Take a look at this detailed report that talks about the arrests made and how this scam unfolded.
In a major breakthrough in the rupees 590 crore embezzlement case linked to the IDFC First Bank, the alleged mastermind Ribhav Rishi and 3 others have been arrested. The other accused have been identified as Abhishek Singla, Abhay Kumar and Swati Singla. 2 of the accused in the case are former officials of IDFC First Bank, while the other 2 are reported to run a private partnership firm. On Tuesday night, all 4 were taken to Sector 6 hospital in Panchkula for medical examination following their arrest. On Sunday, which was 22nd of February, the IDFC First Bank disclosed a rupees 590 crore fraud committed by its employees and others in accounts held by the Haryana government. The Anti-Corruption Bureau, which had registered the case, is currently interrogating the accused in connection with the alleged large-scale financial fraud. According to preliminary findings, the accused are suspected to have played key roles in the diversion and misuse of funds amounting to rupees 590 crore. Meanwhile, Haryana DGP claims that there is a lot of volume in the IDFC First fraud.
जांच हरियाणा सरकार के एक विभाग ने करी। इस जांच के दौरान बैंक को पता चला, तो बैंक मुकदमा अपनी तरफ से दर्ज करवाना चाह रहा था कंप्लेनेंट बन के। उन्होंने चंडीगढ़ में भी अप्रोच किया और उन्होंने मुंबई में भी अप्रोच किया, लेकिन पैसा हरियाणा सरकार का जो मरा हुआ है, तो हमने दोनों जगह पे पहले ही बात कर ली थी कि मुकदमा हम यहाँ पर दर्ज कर रहे हैं, और क्योंकि अगर कोई फ्रॉड हुआ है तो लाइकली यहीं से हुआ होगा जहां पे हमारे हरियाणा सरकार के दफ्तर थे, जिनको उन्होंने कहा है। ये उनकी असेसमेंट है। निश्चित तौर पे वो 4 नहीं, जितने भी होंगे वो सभी को गिरफ्तार किया जाएगा।
Early on Tuesday, Haryana Chief Minister Nayab Singh Saini had informed the State Assembly that the government will ensure those involved will not be spared.
And now viewers, after the harrowing incident of racist attacks against 3 Arunachal women took the nation by storm, chief ministers of the northeastern states have spoken out strongly against it. Although the couple who hurled the derogatory abuses has now been arrested, the question still remains, where does the discrimination end? Take a look at this report.
पॉलिटिशियन है उसका बाप, तू क्या औकात है तेरी आने की वहाँ पे? जबान पे काबू रख अपनी।
आप बिना अंदर कपड़े
कि क्या बोला? देख रहे हो एग्रेशन इनका?
क्या बोला? हम दारू पीते हैं। मेरा रूम चेक करो, एक भी चीज मिला ना, उसके बाद देखेंगे।
पीछे करके बात कर।
देखा ना?
उंगली पीछे करके बात कर। उंगली पीछे करके बात कर।
उठा।
35 साल का लड़का तेरे यहाँ बुढ़ा होता होगा, क्योंकि ड्रग्स इतने करते हो तुम लोग। कस्टम ऑफिसर का बेटा है वो, पॉलिटिशियन है उसका बाप, तू क्या औकात है तेरी आने की वहाँ पे? तेरे यहाँ पे आदमी मसाज पार्लरों में काम करते हैं, हमारे यहाँ नहीं। पढ़े लिखे है वो।
कहाँ के?
वो मेरे को बोल रही है तेरा आदमी मसाज पार्लर में मिला होगा।
हम लोग यहाँ
3 women from Arunachal Pradesh were racially targeted over a minor household installation that quickly escalated. Chief ministers of the northeastern states have spoken out against the racial abuse against these Arunachal women in Malviya Nagar of Delhi, calling the incident condemnable and reprehensible. Union Minister Kiran Rijiju and Minister for Northeast Jyotiraditya Scindia strongly condemned the racial abuse and assured of stringent action. Following the statements, Delhi police arrested the racist couple Harsh Singh and Ruby Jain. booked them under relevant sections of the Scheduled Caste and Scheduled Tribes Act, and investigation underway. The couple have since apologized of the derogatory remarks and racial slurs they made on February 20th. People from the Northeast have been repeatedly targeted with racial slurs over how they look and how they are not Indian enough. Is the arrest of the accused enough to dismantle this historic racial discrimination subjected to people from the Northeast, or does the system need stricter measures? Beyond the outrage and arrests, the larger question remains: how many more incidents before the prejudice stops? And now, viewers, after wrapping up his Singapore visit, Uttar Pradesh Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath has begun his Japan tour with a clear message: investment, industrial partnerships, and a push to position Uttar Pradesh as a global manufacturing hub. From boardroom meetings in Tokyo to addressing Indian diaspora on Sanatan Dharma, here's the full report. Take a look. From Singapore to Tokyo, Uttar Pradesh's global outreach continues. Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath receives a ceremonial welcome in Japan's capital. He was received by the Vice Governor of Yamanashi Prefecture and India's ambassador to Japan. The focus: investment. High-level meetings with top Japanese corporations as Uttar Pradesh now seeks to position itself as a global manufacturing and future-ready hub. Discussions revolve around logistics parks, warehousing, multimodal transport, and medical device manufacturing. The Chief Minister highlights UP's connectivity to the dedicated freight corridor, its expanding expressway network, and rapidly growing industrial ecosystem. He extends invitations to Japanese companies to explore long-term partnerships in the state. But the visit not just confined to a business. Addressing the Indian diaspora in Tokyo, the Chief Minister speaks about Sanatan Dharma and cultural revival in the state. He says Uttar Pradesh witnessed the return of Sanatan traditions under his leadership. From boardroom diplomacy to cultural assertion, Yogi Adityanath's Japan visit blends investment ambitions with civilizational messaging.